This meeting is being recorded.
Great. Yep. Okay, so it's just a reminder of kind of where the hands-on nutrition workshops sit on the pathway, with each step of the pathway building upon the knowledge and skills in the previous one. So with the hands-on nutrition workshops, this is kind of where we get into the nitty-gritty and the really fun stuff of the program, and we're trying to impart, that food literacy knowledge. We're going to use our group facilitation skills, cooking skills as well, and we're going to start, teaching others actual skills in the kitchen. So today is just a bit of a refresher on running a hands-on nutrition workshop. So I'll guide you through any updates kind of from the last 12 months, along with the resources that go along with those updates. So the learning outcomes from the level 4 kind of training is that you'll just have a better understanding of how to appropriately use our, resources, and you'll just be more across everything that we have available and the different kinds of workshops that you can run. So just running it back to basics a bit. The hands-on nutrition workshops, so they're just cooking skills-based workshops that can be run with up to 12 participants usually. We can do more, we definitely do less. 12 is kind of like your golden number. Any more than that works, but you'll just want to have a few extra volunteers and things like that if you're running them with a bigger group. They're a really great way to connect with the community and potentially even with your branch for a day of fun and learning and health promotion. So the workshops all have 3 basic components. So you'll do some sort of nutrition education. Our standard nutrition education is around healthy and affordable cooking at home. And then you, time permitting, will do a bit of like a knife skills, a knife safety demonstration. This one can get removed if you're pinched on time. So if you only have like an hour with a group or something like that, we can just verbally give some knife safety tips. But it's always nice to do a little demonstration if we can. And then it moves into a group cooking activity. So the sessions go for about, I'd say, 2.5 to 3 hours for the actual cooking component, like the actual entire workshop. You can squish that down to 2 hours if you remove the demonstration, plus setting up and packing up. So it's really kind of a half-day endeavor, I'd say, running a full workshop. So other than our standard workshop, like I said, is just around healthy and affordable cooking at home. And we'll kind of look at the, if you got a training pack, you'll have the flip book pages in there, but I'll bring the flip book out and we can look at kind of the way we've updated the education. But yes, so our standard workshops around healthy and affordable cooking at home. And that's just really practical tips for getting more fruit and veg into your meal on a budget, really. So it has some good meal examples, breaks it down into breakfast, lunch, and dinner, how you can kind of get more fruit and veg in your meals for each of those times of the day. So that's kind of our recommended one for just our standard workshop if the group doesn't have any unique needs. And then we do have education pages around cooking for 1 or 2. This is quite popular kind of with 2 different groups. So it's quite popular with really elderly groups who a lot of times we've done like groups that have a lot of people who may have been recently widowed and things like that. It also can be used on the opposite kind of end of the spectrum with school leavers. So potentially people who are moving out of home for university and things like that, and are going to need to just be cooking for themselves, which is can be quite challenging in terms of not wasting food and portion control. So those are kind of the 2 most popular groups that we kind of focus for that workshop. And then we have our healthy lunchbox workshop focus. This one's probably the most popular beyond the standard healthy and affordable cooking at home. The healthy lunchbox one is geared to parents of young children, not so much the young children themselves. We do have just about completed, and that for level 5, a whole new suite coming out of kids workshop resources, and those will be for actually doing workshop with like young kids and things like that. Whereas the healthy lunchbox workshop for level 4 is more focused on like the parents of the children. And then we have our general cooking on a budget workshop, which kind of focuses on ultra low budget recipes and ways to really eat healthy on a budget. So for each of these workshops, it'll have its own kind of little set of resources that come with it. So it'll have its own set of nutrition education flipbook pages. It'll have a participant booklet specific to that theme. So each participant will now get a participant booklet that covers the education that we went over for the day, as well as all the recipes that we make on the day in the workshop, plus a few more. They'll have, and as well as like a pantry staples list for the recipes we talked about. And you'll also get a recipe selection guide, which that should be in your training folder if you have it. That's kind of a newer resource that I'll go over in more detail on the next couple slides. But those are kind of the themes that we have available at the moment. They've just the most popular and the most requested. Not to say we won't do more in the future, but that's kind of what we have at the moment. Does anyone have any questions about kind of the 3 themes? I'll go into more detail on the actual resources. But does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, great.
Yep. So are we getting a new lot of a new pack for this workshop?
So once you have a workshop planned and you decide on the theme, then we can send the new pages and things like that.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Flipbook. Yeah. Okay, there hasn't really been any changes into the workshop equipment that you need to run the workshops. So this workshop equipment list kind of assumes that you're just working out of your hall or not a commercial kitchen. I know some people do have access to running workshops in venues where they have a commercial kitchen, so you don't actually need to bring in all the kitchen equipment. But in general, we'll have the most benches will have some sort of pull-up banner. You'll have the actual kitchen kits if you need them. Those are usually those big like black tubs, induction cooktops, and then a few other communal equipment like muffin pans and whisks and things like that. And then other equipment, sometimes if you're running frequent workshops and you're running them at your hall, most venues will have extension leads if you're doing them elsewhere and stuff. But if you're running them at the hall, we can potentially help out with extension leads and power surge power boards, as you do need the good ones, or the inductions will trip them, as well as potentially cable cover mats and things like that. So the equipment, as you guys might know, does kind of get shared across divisions. It usually just gets put with who's using it the most. A lot of times we're coming out for the first 1 or 2 full workshops that you're running by yourselves anyway, so we'll bring the equipment with us. And then if it looks like it's going to be an ongoing thing, we can either sort out where the equipment is in the division, or potentially if you only need 1 tub or 2 tubs, if you're just doing smaller groups, we can get that on a branch level as well if it's something that's happening quite frequently. Yeah, they are fairly expensive, so we just like to make sure that if we're giving a set, that it gets used and shared appropriately and things like that. So with the participant packs, these are quite similar to what you would have seen in the past. So usually with the workshops when we're running them through QCWA Country Kitchens. The participants will get a calico bag, so that's like that shopping bag, a green participant apron, a tea towel, and an Eat for Health brochure. And we'll either bring these with us if we're coming to run the workshop with you, or we will send them to you in the mail if it's something that you're running without us present. But yeah, no big changes to that, other than they'll get the participant booklet, which is just a bit more extensive than the recipe booklet that they used to get in their packs. All right, we'll go a little bit over the structure. I'm just going to grab, I forgot to bring in the flip book, but I'm just going to grab it so we can have a look at the pages. Give me one sec. Got that. So we'll run over a little bit of the structure now, which is similar, but there probably has been a few changes if you haven't run a workshop in a while. So they all follow the same general structure of kind of 7 sections, as you can see on the slide. We'll go through kind of each section in a little bit more detail. But for those of you, most of you are familiar or have done the training, the main change from our previous workshops a year or two ago is around that we don't do the recipe, we don't complete a recipe demonstration prior to the education anymore. We just do some simple knife skills instead. This just helped keep the workshop running a bit more on time. We just found that doing the recipe demonstration and then having the morning tea before cooking, it was extending it out to 4 hours, and most people just don't have 4 hours to give. So we did change that a little bit just to make the workshop a bit more compact. And we found that the knife skills was actually a bit more helpful for the participants as well. So setup, we still set up the workshops the same way that we always have done, in kind of that U shape. So ideally we kind of set this up before the participants come. So this obviously will vary by venue, how long it will take you to set up and things like that. Sometimes, like I said, we do have access to more commercial style kitchens, and that's great. And we just pop in and everything's there, and we don't even need to really set it up like this. But traditionally, if we're doing it in our branch hall or like a community hall, yeah, we set it up like this in this kind of U-shaped pattern with the cords and everything in the middle, which we just encourage everyone to stay away from, and with everyone working around the outside of the tables. And then we'll usually have, you know, a little table at the front that we use if we're doing a little knife skills demo. You can use that table as well as we use that to deliver the education from. And then I always find it quite helpful to just have a secondary table off to the side with all your communal food items. So that's your like olive oils and things like that. And then on those tables as well, I tend to pre-set up the ingredient tray. So I'll have a tray with the recipe and then all the ingredients for that recipe, not pre-prepared. So they're obviously doing all the chopping and measuring, but I'll just set the whole ingredients on the tray so that whoever's making that recipe can then just grab that tray and bring it back to their station. So once we set up, then we kind of move into our welcome. This hasn't really changed at all. So we just, you know, hopefully everyone's walking in a good mood and into a warm and inviting space. This is also kind of a good time to talk about your branch and any other community work potentially QCWA might be doing in your area. So we're just trying to make sure that everyone signs in where possible. Yeah, so sorry, Deb just asked in the chat, preset trays rather than let people collect the food items off the table. I personally just think it runs smoother, so I don't pre-prepare anything. Like I'll just leave a whole bag of sultanas and they have to measure it out, rather than search through. I think if you have unlimited time and no one's the participants have plenty of time, you could definitely just have everything on the table and have it collect themselves, almost like they're going shopping. I just think usually I'm running on like everyone only has a couple hours, so I'll preset the trays, but it's definitely optional and you could do it either way. That's more just for just to make it smoother and for time efficiency depending on the group, in my experience. So the main one that sometimes we do struggle with, particularly if one of us isn't there, like myself or Maddie or Alex or Rosie, is in a perfect world, we love to get the registration and consent form. So if we're not coming, we'll usually send these out to you beforehand. And this is just for if it's like a full Country Kitchens workshop. Sometimes, like what Karen's doing, and Jenny in Beanley, they're volunteering with Wesley and they're kind of running their own workshops and adding a bit of our stuff to it. So we don't really need to do registration and consent for that. This is if they're paying to do a Country Kitchens kind of workshop. That ideally they will sign a registration form. It collects a little bit of details that we use in our reporting, as well as it has like the box that says that they consent to photos potentially going on social media and things like that. Which they can definitely hit no to that box. I've had people do, and we just make sure that they're not in any of the photos and things like that. So yeah, the other things really just for welcomes, we just do a bit of housekeeping like you always do at any of your QCWA meetings, really. We'll give them a brief agenda of the day, run over what's in their participant bags, and let them know what they're taking home with them at the end of the day. So the next part is the nutrition education, which uses a flip book. At this point, has everyone seen the flip book before and used the flip book in some form?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Yes, for Margaret.
Yeah, great. Okay, it's not a completely foreign concept. So just wanted to make sure that. I'll still go over the new pages, but that's good. That's what I thought it would be. So we're still using with the changes, the workshops, the flip book as the main way to deliver the education in the workshops. We've just updated the content of these flip books to probably, I don't know what I'd say. I'd say to be a bit more practical. Like before, it was just around why it was probably important to get more vegetables and eat healthy. And now I think we've shifted the focus to more to how to actually do that, if that makes sense. More the how than the why. A little bit of the why still, of course, but now we've just made it hopefully more actually practical education that people can take one or two things from when they get home. In your training packs, you should have a copy of the flip book if you ever want to flip through it. This is just for the standard workshop, the healthy and affordable cooking at home. Like I said, there is separate flip book pages and education for those other themes like cooking for one or two and healthy lunchbox and things like that. The healthy and affordable cooking at home really just focuses on practical strategies for increasing fruit and veg intake, meal planning, and budgeting. And the other three workshops, the cooking on a budget, cooking for one or two, or healthy lunch boxes, also really kind of take a more practical focus, I think, than our previous maybe education did. So we'll just I'll just run over like a few almost of the key just to show like the changes. So with the flip book, like I said, if you've got your copy, you've just got a paper copy there. But I won't use the big one because everyone's familiar with it. But yeah, these are obviously the bigger flip books that people are familiar with. And the audience views what's on the front. And then you've got your education on the back that you can read from. So that's kind of what the audience sees at the front. I'm just gonna stop sharing so that we all look a bit bigger for a sec. Yeah. So obviously that's what the audience sees at the front. And then at the back, you have a bit of a script. I always just like to remind people, make it clear, you don't have to read what's on the page word for word. It's just there as a guide, or if you get a bit lost, like I sometimes will get a weird question and then I forget what I was talking about, and I can use it to guide me back. If you're someone who's like a confident speaker and you want to put your own spin on it, that's great. Whereas some people like to read it word for word like a script, and that's not a problem as well. So you can do either way, whatever suits you. But you'll see with the education now, if you look through it, there's only a little bit about the 5 key messages, and then it's much more practical information. Like particularly we've got, like on page 6 of that flip book, just a much better visuals for the audience. So that's actually showing them like a day on a plate. So if you were going to get all your serves of fruit and veg in a day, that's what it actually visually looks like. And then we actually talk about ways that you can do that, like breakfast ideas to get a vegetable in, which can be quite challenging and things like that. And then we actually go over, each meal of the day and give them some examples of healthy and affordable meals that they could make, some being really quick to make, some taking a bit longer, to help them reach those 2 serves of fruit and 5 serves of vegetables. So that's what we kick off the workshop with, is this nutrition education flip book, whatever theme you're doing. So this one's a healthy and affordable cooking at home. And yeah, we've had lots of positive feedback about, I think, the way that we've rejigged the education, and just about it being a lot more useful for our participants as well. Does anyone have any kind of questions around the content in the nutrition education flip book? No, that's good. Okay, I'm going to reshare this now. So it'll be easier if we could all see each other. Go. That's for the no watch. Okay, great. So usually after we deliver the education, time permitting, so like I said, if you're in a pinch and you only have about an hour and a half, 2 hours, you can just kind of verbally go over some knife safety. If you've got the time, I do think this is a very useful thing to do if you feel confident in doing it, which is just a really short knife skills demonstration, which helps participants learn how to use a knife safely and efficiently. So we tend to demonstrate with an onion, just a standard round vegetable. That tends to be a good example of holding a knife safely and things like that. And, obviously with the round vegetables, if you don't use the proper technique, it can be a bit difficult to chop as well. So we do have a link, and I can, if you haven't seen it, I can send it around. I'll send a post-training email, and I can loop it into there. But there is a YouTube video if you ever just felt like you wanted to watch how we tend to do it. Me and the other girls, if we're running them. There's like anything, there's no perfect way to do it, but there is the video where you can watch it. That's how we tend to demonstrate knife safety, which is mainly just kind of talking about actually setting up your space safely. So setting up the chopping board itself safely and make sure it's not sliding, and potentially putting a chucks underneath if needed. Then demonstrating around proper knife grip. So, holding it like a handshake rather than holding it with the finger on top, which kind of loses a lot of power in your cutting. And then talking about how always trying to get the ingredients to be flat so that you can cut them on a flat surface. With an onion, you always chop it in half first, and then you're working with it flat from then on. And then we'll show them basic grips. So, the claw grip. So when you're holding a veg, how you tuck your fingers in underneath so that you don't nick them. And then a bridge hold once it gets too small, then the knife's in the middle. And then we'll just reinforce, general knife safety. Like if you're walking with the knife, point it away from others, carry the blade facing down, things like that. But I'll put that video in the post-training link, but it is quite a helpful little video. It's just one of us doing the knife demo and shows how we usually do it. So after we quickly do a bit of knife skills, we will tend to then move on to the cooking. So depending on your group's skill level, if you have a group that is quite low cooking skills, I would really recommend taking, even probably more so, like if you need to take back some of the knife skills and do this instead, is taking the time to actually, before everyone grabs their ingredients, read through the recipe with them. So, because sometimes things that seem like common sense, like terms like dicing versus chopping versus slicing, or grading, they might not actually be familiar with what that means. So it can just be really helpful to take a bit of time just to read through the recipe and make sure they actually understand all the words in the method. Particularly for those groups who maybe are a bit lower in their cooking skills and things like that. And then usually I'll do a check-in with the knife skills, like is everyone confident enough to use a knife, things like that. And then give them a brief overview as well of using the induction ovens. And then once you kind of feel confident that they're ready to get started, we'll usually, this is the same as previously, hasn't really changed. We will break them off into groups of 2 to 3, assign a recipe to each group, and then just assist them as needed, walking around the room, and then we'll clean up and we'll eat and everything. So same thing after the rest of the food's all done, we'll usually set it up. I usually set it up on a front table and everyone kind of does like a buffet, like serve themselves, and we'll chat about what we liked about the recipes and things like that. So this is just kind of, I think we added this into the guidelines, but just a little bit around tips about supporting participants effectively. So just remembering when we're running the workshops and we're watching them, try to attempt to do techniques like cutting, grading, whichever it may be, that they are learning new skills, and it takes time and practice. So one knife demonstration is probably not going to be enough for most people to master the technique. So check in with them, but do give them the space and to try and explore and give it a go on their own, as long as they're doing so safely. As sometimes I feel like, it's so tempting, like even with my kids, when I see them, you just want to like step in and do it, because it's just sometimes can feel a bit hard to watch or painful to watch, like, almost like a little kid trying to do it with shoes, like you just want to get in and do it. But yeah, just trying to take a breath, take a step back, and if they're not doing anything that's not safe, just letting them do it. As sometimes they can get a bit self-conscious or, flustered if they feel like someone's watching them, just like any of us, I think, do in life when someone who is watching us do something. And if someone is having difficulty, just definitely check in with them, trying to avoid stepping in immediately and doing it for them, but definitely check in and maybe re-demonstrate the technique or offer another helpful prompt, and then let them practice the skill independently. So with the workshops, we're just aiming to really bolster their confidence in the kitchen. We're not expecting them to be perfect cooks at the end of a session. And this is just like I won't go over too much because it's been done before, but just reminding participants throughout the workshop of food safety and making sure the food's being stored properly. If you have never done it, most of you would have. We do have that Do Food Safely course, which is free. I can put the link in the post-training email as well, just in case anyone hasn't seen it before. So after they have finished with lunch, like I said, I usually kind of set it up in a nice little buffet style at the table. Everyone serves themselves a plate of the different recipes. And then we usually just, casually chat about what we liked about it, what we didn't like about it, and things like that. And then I usually recommend, depending on the space, if there's enough space, I'll usually have the participants kind of clean their own dishes and just stack them on the table, and then I'll organize them all. Sometimes the kitchens are just really small. It's easier to, if you have enough volunteers, just to have 1 or 2 people in the kitchen doing the washing up. So that just kind of depends on the venue, but usually we'll thank everyone for coming. We do have usually feedback forms that they can do, and that just says, they're very, very short. They're like 3 questions, whether they enjoyed the day or not. And then those registration and feedback forms, you can either take a photo of them and send it to us, you can scan them, or if you prefer, we can just send you a prepaid Australia Post sachet, and then you can send that just back in the mail, the actual hard copy forms. So before the workshop, just let us know your preference for getting the forms back, and we can make that work. And then, you might just take this opportunity as well to invite participants to attend, any future QCWA or Country Kitchens activities that you might be running. There's an example of the feedback form, sorry, that I was just chatting about. So as you can see, they're quite short, and they just kind of run over if they enjoyed the day, if they'd recommend it, and then just ask specifically about what did they enjoy, what did they learn, and do you have any feedback or suggestions? And then after your workshop, if you can include the feedback forms and the level 4 activity in your report, that's super, super helpful. They health and wellbeing love when we do workshops. It's definitely great to be reported upon, especially if we have all the details. So just making sure that usually we'll check in with you after, because we always know what a workshop's going on, because we're either there or sending materials. But just letting us know how it went, or if you need to do anything differently next time. So just one of the resources I want to go over, and I think I'll just put it up on the screen, is the one that's kind of quite new, is around the recipe selection guide. So, not every recipe works well in a workshop setting. So we've created specifically a recipe selection guide to help you plan a workshop that is suited to the number and abilities of the group you are working with. So the recipe selection guide will help you choose your recipe format. So depending on time, participant group, number of helpers, budget, things like that, you might choose to make 1, 2, or multiple recipes during your workshop. I'd say most workshops run 2 to 3 at the most recipes. So a lot of times they'll do a savory and a sweet. You might have 2 groups making 2 batches of savory, 2 groups making 2 batches of sweet. And then other times you'll have kind of more, they'll do 3 recipes, and they'll do like almost like an entree, a salad, kind of a more main dish, and then a sweet as well. There's nothing wrong with 2 groups making the same thing. We have that all the time, just to make enough food for everyone. So that's an option as well. But any more than 3 recipes does tend to sometimes get a bit hairy. So my recommendation would keep it to 2 or 3, unless you have heaps of volunteers and you want everyone to make their own thing, and you have a bit more of a budget. If they've paid well, whatever group you're working with has paid well per participant, and you want to have more variety, you can do that as well. So selecting the recipes, the number of recipes you make during a workshop, like I said, depend on the number of participants, how many groups you have. So sometimes we just wait till registrations close, and then we're confident in our venue, like what's available, so do we have an oven, all that kind of stuff. The workshop recipe cards. So the best thing now is that the workshop recipe cards are all pictorial. So I will bring this thing open. Oh yeah, here's one. So the workshop recipe cards are all now pictorial recipe cards. So you can kind of see here on the screen. So they have the, let me just pull up the recipe selection guide actually, because I think that will be easier. It's, you do have a copy of this in your book, but then it's just a bit easier for me to see what's happening. So as you can see, this is the recipe selection guide. And when you go through it, it's got, so at the beginning, you kind of have all your options of recommended workshop recipes listed, and we've divided them up into categories. So snacks, sides, and salads, your main dishes, and your desserts. The participants in their booklet will actually have about 7 more recipes than this. They're just recipes that we really like, but they don't lend well to a workshop. So they at least have the recipe and they can make it at home and things like that. So that's things like the Mediterranean chicken bowl. It's a great recipe, but it just doesn't work very well in like a workshop setting where you're sharing everything. And then we just chat about what format you want to do. So it says if you're going to only do 1 recipe, this is what we recommend, 2 recipes or multiple. And then it will chat a little bit about group sizes, so not having more than 3 participants and things like that. Then I'll get into so here's a good example of the workshop recipe cards. So these is what they look like now, if you haven't seen them. Previously, they were just more your standard recipe with the writing. So the front of the workshop recipe card will always have a picture in that right corner. So this is the carrot chickpea salad. It will tell you how many it can serve in a workshop setting. So for example, this can serve 8 people. It takes about 20 minutes to prep, and it has no cook time because it's salad. It'll have equipment list of everything that you need. If the equipment has a star beside it, so you can see the strainer has a star, that just means it's not in the standard kitchen kit. So you might have it in your extra communals, or you might need to ask us about getting one if you don't have a strainer available at your venue. So then we have actual pictures of all the ingredients, as well as specifically how much you'll need to cook it for the workshop. So you'll need 4 carrots grated for this, a 400-gram can of chickpeas, 3 tablespoons olive oil. So we found the visuals really good for multiple groups. So we do some disability groups, low English groups, really helpful just, I think, to have a picture. And then for the actual method, we've got a step-by-step method as best we can with pictures so they can actually see what each step of making the recipe looks like. So, the first step for this one's adding all the carrot, chickpeas, dates, spring onion, and parsley into the bowl. Then we show that how we toss it to combine. Then we show them how to combine the dressing. This is a pretty simple recipe, but and then you whisk with a fork until combined. And then what the final product should look like. Does that make sense? The recipe cards? Yeah, they look good. Yeah, so we found them. Yep. They're great.
Excellent.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, really good, I think.
Yeah, really helpful for just a range of groups, even just groups who just have really low cooking skills and might not understand a term. And then great for disability and low English groups as well as a bonus, which is great. Okay. So that was good. We went over the recipe cards. We went over that. Yeah, and then this is kind of to my comment earlier. Just consider how you want to set up each workstation for the cooking workshop, whether you want to pre-do the ingredients on trays, as I mentioned, which I think is a great option if you're limited on time, or maybe you have already a bit more of a high needs group that you think are going to take a bit longer anyway. Just a good way to let it run a bit smoother. But yeah, always letting them prepare it and everything themselves. That's really it. Does anyone have, I'll show you the participant booklet too, actually, just while we're here. I know you have it in your thing, but might as well show you. That's like the last resource. That's kind of oh, here it is. That's different. So you remember, if you remember previously in the bags, we used to just give them like a recipe booklet, but now they actually get this kind of full-sized booklet that has food safety. It actually has a kind of a summary of the education that you deliver. So this is for healthy and affordable cooking at home. So it has some of those visuals that were actually in the flip book, as well as some of those meal ideas and things that we talk about, as well as some practical tips like how to add more vegetables into pasta dishes and then curries, eggs. So just practical information. And then, of course, they're still going to get their, this is the pantry staples checklist they get in it as well. Just stuff that we recommend. It's going to make cooking a lot easier if you just always have these kind of on hand. And then they'll get all the recipes. So the recipes they get in the participant booklet, they're not the pictorial because we couldn't fit them in, but they're just kind of your more standard recipe page. But it does have like little tips and stuff at the bottom of the page. Yeah, and then Deb just commented around flip cards with dicing, slicing, and grading. We have a bit more of that kind of thing for the kids workshop resources that we're working on right now, which haven't been finished yet, and things like that. But potentially something we could add into the participant book, actually, even just a picture of each style of chopping. But yes, then they get all their recipes here. And they take this home. And I think that's kind of all the new resources that go with everything. Does anyone have any questions or anything about that, about the new resources or the workshop themes or topics or anything like that?
Yeah, it's Astrid here.
Hi,
So
Astrid.
can we get rid of the old nutrition education flip books then?
Yeah, so keep the actual flip book, like the black, like
the black one,
the black book,
no.
But you can get rid of the pages, and then before your next event, or if we're coming up, we can either mail you, like we just mail them in like a tube, or we'll mail you the set of A3 pages before your workshop, or we will, if we're coming anyway, we'll bring them out with us and slide them in, and then you keep that.
I mean, not the large one, but I've got a copy of the old nutrition education flip book still in my box. So the
yeah, you can get rid of just this. This is
one.
kind of the standard one now. Yeah.
Okay. You just use this with every workshop. Yeah. Okay. Oh, good. Thanks.
No problem. Does anyone else have any questions or anything?
Margaret.
Hi, Margaret.
Hi, the new flip books look really amazing.
Oh, good.
I can't wait to have a workshop to use it.
Yeah, I think they're a lot more practical, which was the goal, is how can we actually like get one or two things hopefully even if it's one thing that someone takes home and can actually practically put into use, then we've done a good job, I think, for one session if that happens.
Yes, they're great. They're great.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments? I will flick through that knife skills video just so you've got the link directly, and the food safety, although most of you would have done that already as well.
I have a question, please.
Yeah, go for it.
I saw an email last night that came from State Office, not necessarily from Country Kitchens, but it's from the food safety, and it's about talking to children